You're listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast.
Hello and welcome back to The Whole Truth podcast. I'm Paul Armstrong. We're having a chat with a company today that's in a rush. Black Bear Minerals. I think they should change their name to Running Bear. The new chief executive, Dennis Lindgren, has come from Alcoa. He's clearly joined this company because he sees an opportunity. That opportunity is in the silver project that the company has just acquired in Texas. It's a very high-grade silver project. He points out the highest silver grade on the ASX. It already has a significant resource, but the real proposition here is we're going to grow the resource, and that's how we're going to make money for our shareholders. That's in parallel with the company's existing gold project in Nevada. He talks about why that's still going to grow legs over the next 12 months. The company is already drilling at the silver project. He's wasted no time. As I said, he's a man in a rush, and those assays are expected in Q2 next year. So there's plenty of news flow for this company. Dennis takes us through why they like the project, why they did the deal, and how they're going to unlock the value of it over the next 12 months. Dennis, you've hit the ground running. You've been in the chair for a couple of months. You're not wasting any time here. You've completed this transaction, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But you're planning a pretty busy 2026.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, and thanks to your listeners for having me today. It's been an amazing start so far for the first 2 months being with Black Bear Minerals. We just recently completed the acquisition of Shafter, and I think it's probably worthwhile to remind your listeners this is one of the highest grade, or is the highest grade silver asset on the ASX at the moment. So 17.5 million ounces at 289 grams a tonne. It is really a high grade asset that we've been able to bring on board.
Right, so let's look at that transaction. You've recently completed it since you came into the chair, changing the name to Black Bear. It's a bit of a reboot of sorts for the company. I mean, we'll get into the Independence Gold project that you've still got, but obviously this is becoming the core focus for the time being. I mean, silver's pretty hot, we know. Just was rated one of the strategic minerals in the US. This project's in Texas, so it all seems to line up. But one of the things that people would be thinking here is, why did the company swing into this silver project all of a sudden? What did you see that made it so important for you?
Yeah, just a slight clarification. We almost haven't swung into it. We've been actively looking for a really good asset that kind of complements our US focus.
Were you looking for a silver asset, specifically?
Yeah, yep. So, the founders of the original, what was James Bay Resources or Minerals previously, now moving to Black Bear Minerals, we've had a strong kind of focus on precious metals within the US, as well as the critical minerals that may exist there and how we could support domestic assets within the US. So silver was always a primary target. We have a good understanding of what's happening to the silver market, how it's being influenced, and we have a really...
So you're after a silver project?
Definitely.
So you're scouting for that.
Yeah.
You mentioned the grade. It is very high grade.
Very high.
The resource, albeit a foreign resource, is relatively small. I suppose one of the things that I always find as a non-geo type, I just like to move the decimal point 2 spots to the left, and it gives me a gold equivalent resource.
Yes.
So in that sort of thing, you've got about 176,000 ounces. Yep. If you keep it simple, our listeners sort of understand gold currency. People on the ASX, I think, when you talk silver, that's always a bit of a challenge. But so you've certainly got a resource of some significance.
Yes.
As you say, this is really about grade. But it was last mined in, 2013?
Yeah, 2013. Has a historical PEA done in 2018. So that 17.5 million ounces foreign mineral resource estimate is just really what we consider a base. We're looking really in 2026 to use that as a catalyst to expand upon. One thing I would call out is that there's extensive mineralisation that we've seen outside of that resource. So we just consider that the starting point for an asset such as this. The historical asset that allows all of the data that kind of comes with it. It's something that allows for us to say, yep, there's something in the ground that's been proven, and from here on out in 2026, we can really target some expansive growth and some catalysts.
It's worth noting too that when it was last mined, or when mining stopped, I mean the silver price was less than $20 an ounce, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, compared to 62 today,
yes,
it's you're just a completely different world.
Yeah, and look, I think you touched on a good point here, Paul, is that previously, this was an operating site, and what comes with the transaction is actually 150 million of estimated infrastructure that is a existing silver refinery, and within that, it was operating at as low as $17 US, and we're currently well above 60 in the current market. So from our perspective, actually having an asset that previously operated at those conditions, although of course requires some modernisation and bringing up to speed, it provides a really good starting point to think about actually operating within the conditions today.
So let's look at why you think they're so. Let's cut to the chase here. The core of this sort of proposition, if you like, from an investor's perspective is we believe we're going to grow the resource here significantly, and that will drive our share price,
of course,
against a backdrop of very strong silver prices. That's ultimately the proposition, isn't it?
Yes.
So let's look at why you think you can grow that resource.
Well, as I mentioned before, there's been some indication of mineralisation outside. And if you look at some of our past announcements, we of course capture the 17.5 million ounces foreign mineral resource estimate, but we also show an indicated mineralisation area that sits.
You've got sampling and results and the like, haven't you, that take you down that path?
Yeah, one of the key bits that you get with infrastructure is access to the old core shed. And historical operators, they may have been able to, of course, undertake drilling throughout the site. They may not have had as much capital as we do at this point in time, and so they've been selected.
Well, raising money at an $18 silver price wouldn't have been for the faint-hearted, I wouldn't imagine.
No, definitely
and
not.
I suspect. Well, let's talk about money, because you have just raised money.
Yes,
$30 million.
Yeah, of course.
So I think that probably proves your point, doesn't it? And the people were tripping over themselves to throw it at you. So
yeah.
There's plenty of money for someone who's got a high-grade silver deposit and says we're going to drill holes.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, there is. We've been very lucky to have institutional investors who have supported us with this 30 million placement, and that included the acquisition of Shafter, but also leaves us, quite a bit of cash in the bank to focus not just on Shafter, but also on the Independence project, and really look for catalysts.
So, what's the plan of attack? Our listeners would say, great, can get the project, get the grade. Love the fact that this is brownfields exploration. It's the hot spot, and it has been for a couple of years, particularly in the gold space, and now transitioning over to the silver space thanks to the price. But we know there's a system there. There's a big high-grade system there. The question is you've got to drill it out and chase it. So what does 2026 hold in terms of that exploration and news flow?
Well, not just for 2026. We've actually hit the ground running in 2025. The drill rigs are out there turning at the moment.
Right.
I
said at the outset you hadn't wasted any time.
No, we wanted to make sure that we could hit the ground running, make sure that we could get the site set up for the drill campaign, not just here at the end of 2025, but in 2026. For us, it's about, of course, proving out some of those geological trends initially, looking at that mineralisation, that expansion from the current resource, and being able to target some of those zones that we know are potential extensions.
So take us through the food chain. This means assays in the new year.
Yeah, so it means drilling at the moment, sampling at the moment, assays in the new year. Probably targeting to be able to get results out from Q2 or Q2 next year. Being able to, of course, investigate where we see some really primary target zones. One of the beauties of this site, and you would have noticed we put it out an announcement around some rock chip sampling. What we've already identified is that there is an east to west transect along the Mina Grande fault, which is basically giving us some really high grade rock chips that sit along.
That's the famous Mexican fault, isn't it? The one
that's Serra Madre, which is the one that Shafter is holistically sitting within. But on the actual site itself, it's got a Mina Grande fault, which basically goes from east to west, and you've also got north to south. Within that, we've already identified a potential target of a 370 metre strike that sits outside of the existing mineral resource, and that's from just that historical rock chip sampling. Some of the results in that rock chip sampling came back at 3,100 grams a tonne. So, we're talking about really high grade, near surface kind of mineralisation.
31 grams a tonne in gold parlance.
Yeah.
So that's nothing to balk at, is it?
No. And so, when you talk about catalysts for 2026, it is really initially saying, how do we feel about this mineralisation that sits outside of the current mineral resource estimate or the foreign mineral resource estimate, and how can we kind of target some of those zones, prove those zones up, and then launch a more detailed campaign. I think in addition to that, there are some really significant catalysts for Shafter when you talk about the infrastructure. The site is almost fully permitted. There's a few renewals that we need to complete. We're being very conservative with announcing that it's fully permitted until we get those renewals in place. But we do have catalysts around getting this thing into potential operation in the future. And that includes, looking at the dilapidation of the existing infrastructure, but also to the engineering on how we could actually operate this in the near term.
So what does this mean for Independence and the Independence Gold Project? I mean, you've obviously take us through the resource there and how you're going to run, I would have thought, 2 exploration programs in parallel.
Yeah, so the Independence project, it has, of course, the deeper skarn, which is just under 1 million ounces of gold at 6.67 grams a tonne, so very, very high-grade deeper skarn. But the more interesting near-term as well is the near surface, which is at the moment 419,000 ounces at about 0.4 grams a tonne. For people in Western Australia, that's not often that compelling. But when you think about Nevada and you think of the jurisdiction you're operating in, predominantly there are a lot of near neighbours or peers that are operating heat slip operations at a very, very low cost that can access almost free milling gold that is really easy to kind of get your operation started. So for us, that's something that we've been targeting in 2025. We've just done extensional drilling within that near surface area. And we're actually looking at, of course, trying to upgrade that within 2026 early. For this year, we actually targeted 4,000 metres. We were able to achieve 5,000 metres, and those assays are expected, Q1 2026 through.
So what's the timeline there, the schedule in terms of project advancement?
So the schedule, as I said, look for resource expansion probably early in the new year, so within the first half, if not in Q1 2026 for Independence. From there, it's also looking at the permitting process. It sits within what we call the Phoenix Mine Complex. So it's next to NGM's operations, one of the largest gold mines in Nevada, and one of the most profitable, I would mention as well. So it's a really good peer comparison. We actually think that the resources are connected. So they're very, very similar. It's a good proxy to kind of use for what the Independence project could be. So for us, it's about leveraging what they've done under their permitting, which we sit within that complex, and look for an expedited process. So that's one catalyst. The next thing will be actually to look at a mine plan and a mine study that actually leverages that near surface resource and actually starts to produce gold in the near term.
So coming back to these locations, Nevada and Texas,
yep.
Obviously you're well familiar with the US. You've just come, worth looking at the fact you just come out of Alcoa.
Yep.
What were you doing for Alcoa?
So I used to be the Director of Strategy and Business Development for Alcoa globally. We used to look at a lot of critical minerals within the portfolio. So Alcoa, as a large multinational global footprint, huge amount of supply chain all across the world, has access to a large amount of tenements. So it was my job, as well as some competent others, to look at all of the different opportunities that we had in the portfolio that were not core business. One of the probably the highlights that I would call out is the gallium project. We were able to recently, prior to joining Black Bear Minerals, negotiate a deal between the Japanese government, US government and Australian government to develop a plant here in Western Australia that would extract that gallium, servicing 20% of global supply. And one thing your listeners might ask is, well, why is that relevant? Why is that relevant to Black Bear Minerals? Well, that was actually 95% funded by external governments, with capital that was injected to be able to access that resource and supply it.
Because of its highly strategic nature.
Because of its highly strategic nature. And so if you look at silver at the moment, it's actually just been listed as a critical mineral within the US. It's actually been listed as a critical mineral or an industrial asset in China for the last 5 years.
I can see you're about to say I'm going to put my hand up for some more funding.
Well, not. I wouldn't say it's putting up the same level of funding as what gallium would be, but I think silver has a place where it needs to be supported. It's traditionally been focused on as a precious metal, but it's no longer a precious metal. It's an industrial asset. 60% of its global use is used as an industrial asset. And so it does need to be secured, and you need secure domestic supply chains, not just here in Australia, but also within the US. So for us, when we've got an asset that basically has a really high-grade resource, it's got existing infrastructure, partially permitted, it's almost there, ready to be developed, we think that it has a really good place within domestic US to be able to...
Would you ask for some sort of public funding, government funding for exploration, or do you think you have to really put that money into more development type studies?
I think, what we usually ask for when we're doing our capital raise, so as we mentioned, the most recent capital raise, we were able to attract funds. typically what our value proposition is that we want to go out and do exploration with those funds, grow the resources, as you said, and make sure it's as large as possible so that we know that that's in the ground and we can go after it. The opportunity really to develop and put silver into the market, that's that engagement that we can undertake, because that's the near-term opportunity. So for me, I think the preference is always to, of course, use the capital provided in the raises for supporting our exploration, which is what we are. We're an exploration company, Black Bear Minerals is an exploration company. But it doesn't mean that you can't look at the infrastructure that's in place and say, that's actually a really good asset. Maybe we should think about getting this thing up and running as quickly as possible. And whether or not, there's interested stakeholders such as governments who can jump in to support. And it's not, we're not talking about free handouts or just grants for things like this. We're talking about just low risk, low recourse kind of loans or finance debt financing that may be able to just support getting that thing up online in a quicker pace. So for me, I think there's a range of opportunities that are out there and available to us. And it's just about engaging with stakeholders on what issues they have, particularly around silver being a critical mineral now, and how we at Black Bear Minerals could support them in actually addressing that. It's
great. You're obviously really, really on the trot here. Maybe you need to change the name of the company to Running Bear. I think 2026 you're going to start with a bang, I'd say.
Yeah. Look, we're not really wanting to hold back on an asset such as this. When you've got infrastructure in place and you've got a good resource to start with, a good foreign mineral resource to start with, and you have the opportunity to actually think about getting a site up and running when you're an exploration company, you can't really hold back. The opportunity is now. Silver price is at an all-time high. The silver's in the ground, the assets there, the infrastructure's in place. Why wouldn't you think about getting this to create some value for our shareholders immediately?
Dennis, thanks very much. Fascinating story. It's obviously. I think you've obviously come to the company with the intention of making a mark. I think that's the bottom line. You've left Alcoa because you've seen an opportunity. That's obvious. So we'll be following it closely, and we'll get you back in the studio sometime early in the new year to talk about the assays.
Yeah, no, great. Appreciate it, Paul, and appreciate all of your listeners tuning in for Black Bear Minerals.
Cheers.
You've been listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast, produced by Resource Media, hosted by Paul Armstrong for Reed Corporate. Please note that Reed Corporate does not provide investment advice, and investors should seek personalised advice before making any investment decisions.